Hi, welcome to the first ever A Drunk Math podcast. My name is Cory King, and that was Get It Right by Nicolas Cage Match. I'm very excited to have you all here today. We do have a very special guest, the one, the only Mid-States Wrestling Tag Team Champion, one half of the Tag Team Champions. We have Alan Jefferson here. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Cory. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. I'm going to call you Chase, I believe. We're going to pull back the curtain just a little bit, not too much. But what we want to discuss today, we want to go in depth with the art of professional wrestling. What makes it art? I want to get your thoughts on just professional wrestling as a whole. So go ahead, tell me how you got started within professional wrestling. Let me know how everything began.
Absolutely. So yeah, thank you again for having me on to talk about how professional wrestling is art, because absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So my start in professional wrestling, I started out as a fan, right? An admirer of what wrestling was. When I was a kid, they were my real life superheroes, right? I would get to watch these guys do things in the ring that would kill me immediately, right? Yeah. If it happened to me, getting punched in the face, picked up, slammed on the ground, Hulk Hogan, right, famously body slamming the 500, 600, 700 pound Andre the Giant.
800 on a good day.
Right. Yeah. It's a story, baby. You're telling it. But they were those real life superheroes. In the comic books I would read, right, you would see these things and picture them out. And now we have the luxury of the MCU, right? We have superhero movies where you can see that in real life. But when I was growing up, that wasn't really a thing, right? There was the Superman, there was a couple of them, but where you got to see those larger than life kind of figures was wrestling on TV, right? And I grew up a big fan, and the video games played in, like, really had me sucked in. Kind of stuck with it, drifted out a little bit, but then back in college, had some friends that still watched wrestling, would get together for pay-per-views, kind of kept that going, right? And then the chance came through a friend of a friend of a friend who was training and was training down in Harrison, Arkansas. And so, Harrison, Arkansas, started training for Mid-States Wrestling. And now 7 years later, I'm getting old, Cory.
7 years.
7 years.
Okay, because just to let the listeners, I almost said viewers, you can't really see us, but to let the listeners know, I met you about 7 years ago, right? And that was about right when you started. So 7 years, that's a long time. You're now more or less like a veteran of the craft. You're heading toward that double digit.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think about how quickly it goes, and just the blur that the experience of kind of being in wrestling is. To think of the idea that I would call myself a veteran is a little hard to believe, because I think that kind of speaks to the art form of it a little bit, in that it's ever growing and ever changing, and there's so many different ways to do this. And I think I've just kind of gotten started,
Yeah.
Like it's such a small thing that it's kind of hard to think of yourself as a veteran of something that is just so dynamic and fluid. And like, I guess I kind of feel like I'm just starting every time when I work somebody else and wrestle somebody else who does things I've maybe never seen before.
Right.
It's cool. Or that I can't.
Yeah, and the thing is with wrestling too is we're going to continue seeing innovation within wrestling as well. So wrestling as an art form itself is still evolving too. Everything's evolving. You're evolving with it. I love that you could do both a face, a baby face, and a heel. Just real quick, in case the listeners are not aware of what a baby face or a heel is, kind of explain that and explain your role within being a baby face and also your role within being a heel.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So with wrestling, what you're doing in essence is you're telling a story, right? That's kind of the ultimate goal, and the easiest story in the world to tell is good guy versus bad guy, right? There's if you see two people fighting, your natural inclination, you're going to want to cheer for one of those people, right? That's the kind of thing. Or if you're engaged in a fight, if you watch a movie, right? You see, we'll go back to the superheroes again, right? You go watch a Marvel movie, you know who you're cheering for when the fighting starts, right? You know who the good guy is, who the bad guy is. Wrestling has that too. Your babyface is going to be your fan favorite. That's the person that the crowd's really going to want to see win, right? Is going to get behind. They want to amp that crowd up. And then you've got your heels. And heels are going to be the bad guy, right? Because you need to have a bad guy if you're going to create a good guy.
Right.
I think the easiest way, because the way to show you're a good dude, that you're an honorable, you're the top fighter, is to beat somebody who's not, right? To have somebody who challenges that. And that's what the heel's there for. And it's kind of a cool dynamic, because to be a heel, right, it requires some sort of negativity, some sort of like, your goal is to be disliked. You have to do things that will upset people, while on the other hand, you're working with somebody, right? Like, that's where we're kind of pulling back the curtain here, I guess, a lot, but that's the kind of cool dynamic of it, is having that bad guy, that good guy mentality, but everybody's putting it together, right? It's parts you're playing, and kind of teamwork thing.
Right. And the storytelling is all, I find it fascinating. You talked about you tell a story. I find it fascinating that you can tell a story in multiple ways with wrestling as well. You have the storylines, dialogue between your promos and dialogue, and at the same time, you can also tell a story within the ring itself with the moves that you do. Kind of take me behind the creative process there between both avenues, the storytelling when it comes to promos, and also in ring when you're doing your moves and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the things that I love about professional wrestling and kind of what they do, is the different ways you get to connect with an audience. There are a lot of ways to experience wrestling, right? To feel wrestling, to get moved by wrestling, because promos are great. I love to cut promos. When I first started wrestling and I didn't really know what I was doing, I was a little bit terrified to get a mic and, to be in front of live people and just, okay, they're listening, go, right? Tell them something. It's intimidating. It's scary, because that's one of your primary tools of moving people, right? So I can go out there and cut a promo and cut down my opponent, take a couple of barbs if I'm playing a heel, which, that's where I've been buttering my bread recently, since I broke bad, if you will. And you get to get people jabbed up a little bit, right? Or set the stage for a story. If you need a justification for a match, right, you can come up with something, kind of poke somebody a little bit, get them back. It's pretty easy to stoke a fight with your words. But when you're watching a wrestling match, you get to move folks with your body, right? The way when you see somebody get picked up and get slammed onto the ground, there's going to be some natural part of you that's going to, ooh, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's rough
a visceral reaction
to see somebody. Yeah, exactly. It's a visceral reaction when you see somebody just get smashed, right? You see the human body do something that you think, if that happened to me, I'd be hobbling for a week, right? That would suck to get out of bed the next morning. To get to pull that raw primal emotion like out of somebody is kind of the coolest part of wrestling. It's a thing that you don't get really anywhere else. It's battle theater, right? Because it's working with somebody to the feeling of pulling off something that, you're throwing yourself into the air and slamming into the ground, and it's going to hurt, because it's going to hurt, right?
Yeah.
And somebody helps you, and they pick you up and they throw you, and the timing clicks, and you smack into a mat, and you just hear a crowd's just instant, ooh, that reaction. Yeah.
It's connecting. It's like in myself being a musician, it's the same thing when everyone just connects. When you hear that smack on the mat and everyone goes ooh at the same time, everyone feels it. Of course, you're going to feel it more physically. But it's the same thing if a band pulls off like some really awesome, really tight musical part or snippet, and everyone realizes, wow, that was really cool. Or if it's something really emotional, you're really pulling from the same bucket of emotions there, and it's very much so art. The expression there, and you being able to take the crowd and their imagination and really put them in a different place. It's incredible.
And it's just so dynamic too, because we talked about the promos, right? And we talked about the physical in-ring action, but even in between both of those, there's a minute 30 seconds where I'm walking to the ring, and that's my chance to tell the crowd exactly what's going on too, right? If you're going to see two people fight and one of them comes out of the curtain, you hear his music play, it's an upbeat guitar solo, right? Get It Right starts blaring through the speakers, right? You're feeling kind of excited, and you see somebody pop out of the curtain and they're fired up and they're ready to go, and they see you cheering and they go, "Hey!" And they go and they throw their hand out and you smack their hand when they're running to the ring. That guy's fun, right? You want to see that guy win. Like, it's easy to get behind energy, right? It's easy to get behind somebody who's up there and fired up. And if another guy comes out and his music plays and he just walks out and he just stares at you and he scowls at you, right? Just looks mean. It's harder to get behind that guy, right? You can set the stage. It's so 24/7 with wrestling.
Kind of like relating it back to music. It's kind of like your first song. Like, that's your intro is like your very, very first song of your set. At that, you have to really nail it and really be able to set that playing field for everyone. And that, I think that just starts everything out, because people are going to remember the first thing that they see and the last thing that they see. So you got to nail that. And you do a great job. Plus, I do like it when you're a babyface and I get to hear "Get It Right," the song that was at the beginning of the hour.
I will say it is a fantastic way to get hyped up right before taking down a bad guy. So send all my love to "Get It Right." But yeah, absolutely, man. A lot of people will have their opinions of a wrestler before the bell rings. You know, that entrance, it's so important. It's as important as all of it, man.
Awesome. And I just want to talk about your influence and inspiration here. When it comes down to you thinking about for example, you have a show tomorrow. Who are you thinking about? Like, who are you drawing inspiration for what you're going to do tomorrow in St. Joseph, Missouri?
Man, so that's a great question. I love that. So wrestling is so self-referential, right? Where it's all of its callbacks, it's borrowed, not all of it, of course, but you know, so much of it is callbacks. It's finding what works and it's making it work. And growing up, of course, you know, there's those ones that made it. Man, I gotta say, I like to play it sleazy a little bit. I kind of fight like a snake sometimes, and you know, there's that Chris Jericho.
That Chris Jericho.
You know, it's that Chris Jericho. I know this is not a surprise. Had to try to introduce in a way that maybe you wouldn't know right away, but of course, he's the man, right? Like, when it comes to, being a babyface, it wasn't super far off from Chris Jericho either. You know, back when you do it, because he's the kind of guy that did it all. But just that smarmy confidence, right? Kind of bringing that out. Now, I know this isn't going out until a bit later, but you never know who's got these things taped, so I can't give you too much information about my strategy tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
people are coming for the champs, so you gotta protect those secrets. I don't know who you're working for, you know.
Yeah, you don't know. I may be working for
the Top Guns,
for
you know.
Oh man, I could be.
Watch out.
Tell me a little bit more about the organization Mid-States Wrestling. I want to hear more about Mid-States, what you've done with them, kind of that history. Let's go into that a little bit.
Absolutely. So Mid-States Wrestling is where I got my start in pro wrestling, and it's where my bread's buttered. It's my home promotion for sure. It's based out of Harrison, Arkansas. Started and run by a man called the Space Cowboy Jason Jones.
Space Cowboy Jason Jones.
The hardest working man in pro wrestling, baby. Jason's the man. No, it's been going on 23 years. I didn't do my Mid-States history before I came on. I disappointed the Space Cowboy already.
Sorry, Jason.
Sorry, Jason. But it's been going on a long time, and Jason's worked real hard to help this little promotion grow. And man, it really has. It is, I gotta say, one of the coolest locker rooms I've ever been in, because it's a collection of dudes and ladies who all know what it's about, right? It's a brotherhood, and that's one of the things too that just helps wrestling stand out. Is it's kind of dangerous, right? You know, like, it's a dangerous sport, and when you're in there, you're fighting your opponent. That person's your lifeline, right? Like, there's a lot of things that I go out and I do that if the person I'm working with isn't on their game, or they're not paying attention, or they just decide, hey, screw this guy for whatever reason, right? My neck's broke.
Yeah, yeah. 1 inch, you're always about 1 inch away from having some sort of injury if you're doing a dangerous spot, or even some spots that aren't dangerous. You still, if you have missed by an inch there, so that dance that you do, you have to just nail it.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's two sides of it, right? There's the side of you that doesn't want to die in the ring.
Yeah, that's a good side.
It's a solid side. Yeah. Keep that side. And some wrestlers aren't great at, keeping that side in check. And there's the other side that doesn't want it to look fake, right? That wants to sell it, that has to sell it, because that's as important as the other side, right? To wrestling. Like, wrestling is built on its own commitment to itself, right? How, seriously it does and sometimes doesn't take itself is kind of what keeps wrestling alive, because it's another one of those unique art forms that really toes that line between, is it real, is it not real, right? Because it is something that, to dumb it down in ways that I don't necessarily like, it's something that's not real, that presents itself as, right? It's fixed, it's scripted, because I don't know if, unlike or like most other art forms, right, wrestling started as a scam. Like,
yeah.
Like, it's sort of a grift scheme, like, famous for you fixing fights and kind of waging on fights. And it was a way to make some money off people who didn't necessarily know what was going on. And, isn't that the American dream?
Yeah. And songwriting is always embellished. You have works of fiction all the time. So it is a work of fiction, but making that fiction come to reality and having folks just live in the moment, suspend that belief and just live in that moment. There's nothing quite like it. If you're listening to this and have not been to a professional wrestling show once in your life, just go. I don't care if you like wrestling or don't like wrestling. Having that experience once, you'll see what it's like to be in a crowd that's all together, rooting for the good guy or even the bad guy, booing the good guy, booing the bad guy. It does not matter, but just everyone that's just in it and no one cares that it's predetermined. No one cares when it comes down to it. What they want is a beautiful product. How do you make that beautiful product? What is going through your head when you're trying to refine your matches?
So yeah, that's interesting. I like that, because it is about putting on a show, right? That's the whole thing. And if I'm going to do my shameless plug, I think this is a great time. Like Cory said, if you haven't ever done a professional wrestling show, you've heard of it, you've seen it on TV, you saw it when you were a kid, you haven't watched it in a while, find an indie show, find a mid-states wrestling show, go to a live show, let the energy suck you in, because it is unreal. It's the passion of everybody just kind of buying into the show for a couple of hours, getting lost in the good guys and the bad guys, because the wrestlers will pull you in, right? Like, that's what it's for. And like you said, what do you go into? It's interesting to think whenever you're getting ready to fight, because when you go out, you want to have some sort of framework of what's going to happen. Sure. And with wrestling, there's a lot of different stories you could tell, but a lot of it has kind of a similar framework, right? You want to see your good guys start out looking good. You want to know why the crowd should cheer for that guy, right? Mm-hmm. Let him look good, shine him up a little bit, right? Kind of get things going. And then if you've got a bad guy and your bad guy's going to get booed, he should do some bad guy stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to have to cheat a little bit, right? Or maybe he gets to cheat a little bit, right? The great governor of Minnesota, right? What did he say? Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat.
Jesse Ventura.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
The body.
Yeah. And just kind of going back, I'm letting you get more of a plug in here. This will be released on the first of the year. So the very first day, January 1st. I know you have a show tomorrow. This is technically in December. But what shows do you have in the future that you can talk about? Is there anything coming up anytime soon?
Absolutely. So going to go ahead and plug Mid-States a little bit here. In February in Harrison, Arkansas, starting February 8th, every Saturday in February, we will be running down at the Harrison, Arkansas Fairgrounds. We actually set up a little TV taping. We run a YouTube show, Mid-States Wrestling on YouTube. There's a couple seasons out now, several episodes of some really, really good independent wrestling. Fun little storylines kind of built up. We're going to be shooting those, running shows all in February there in Harrison. Definitely come out here in Springfield. We'll be back in March. I think it is March 15th.
March 15th.
We'll be back. So,
all right.
Yeah, will be a exciting time getting things started out. So first of the year, got a lot of fun stuff coming up.
Perfect. Awesome. And for those who are more on the casual side of wrestling fandom, how would you compare the indie side of things, like the mid-states wrestling, to the big product like WWE? Like, what are the differences? What are the similarities between the two?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's cool. Like, I am a fan of both big, WWE, AEW, things like that, and independent wrestling, because while they are really similar, it's wrestlers, it's matches, you're watching moves, seeing this exciting action, these stories being told. It is kind of different, right, in its experience, because watching wrestling on TV is awesome. There is top level storytelling, right? It's some of the best action you're going to see in the world. It's the top
Absolutely.
athletes doing some of the coolest, craziest stuff you're going to see people do, right? And just feats of strength and little dudes up into big guys, right? And it's going to be just top awesome wrestling talent, and you're going to see cool stories, right? And there's lights and the cool cameras and things like that. Like, production of big wrestling celebrates itself and tells it for the story it is, and it's really fun to check out, right? What I love about independent wrestling is it fills in the one gap that kind of big, top level wrestling promotions kind of miss out on, is it's more intimate, right? That live energy, if you go to an independent show, it's going to be a smaller building, right? It's not going to be an arena, a 10,000, 15,000 person building. You're going to be in there with 500, 600 of your closest friends, a couple hundred maybe. And it's might be a little tight, right? Sometimes it's a gym, sometimes it's an armory, but
Bingo hall,
yeah. Right? Or the beautiful Relics Event Center here in Springfield, Missouri, for Mid-States Wrestling.
15th?
March 15th?
Yeah. All right.
Boy, if it's March 8th, then I've just ruined this podcast. Put a little editor's note on there. But
I'm going to Google it right now while you're...
Absolutely. I was trying to pull my calendar up and I was too slow. Wasn't sneaky enough. But the wrestlers, the whole point is to get the energy going, right? There's not a single, there's not a heel, there's not a baby face out there whose goal isn't to get you to pop out of your seat and scream for him, right? At him, for him, whatever it might be. And the energy of a live show is electric because people are just out there willing to go out there. A lot of indie wrestlers are doing it because they love it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of them are paying the mortgage out of it. Most of them aren't, right? It's a tough deal, but people do it because they love it. And it's just, there's a lot of heart to indie wrestling. There's just so much energy. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I could not find what day it is, but we're going to say it's March 15th. If it's March 8th, then sorry, but you can find Mid-States Wrestling. Where can you find it? Facebook?
Absolutely. Facebook, YouTube. I believe there's an MSW Mid-States Wrestling Instagram page as well. MSWtickets.com also will be your handy link for a calendar of all the shows, places, ways to grab tickets, merch if you want it, because we have some pretty cool merch too.
Yeah, that's true. I have some Mid-States Wrestling attire myself, and I think I need to get a new hat here pretty soon. I'm pretty stoked about getting a new hat at the show on potentially March 15th.
The show sometime.
It will happen. But yeah, I love hearing about your experience within professional wrestling. I want to know, why do you do it? Why do you do what you do? What do you find fulfilling within the art that you're creating?
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned kind of earlier with the, how did I get into it, right? Those were my superheroes when I was a kid, and seeing that magic was just that fueled me as a kid, and that feeling was awesome, and it's one you want to recapture. But wrestling gives me a chance to be that superhero now, right?
Yeah.
Like, to do that, and that's definitely my driving thing, man. As a babyface, as a heel, I love the kids that come to wrestling shows.
Right. Yeah.
Kids at wrestling shows is the coolest thing in the world because they get so into it and they love to boo the bad guys and they love to tell me how much I stink. And and I've picked up the oh so fun moniker of Snowflake. So that's a good
Snowflake.
one.
Yeah.
Snowflake. Yeah.
And you're gonna have your and this will already pass. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing tomorrow with your can I say gimmick?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah. Tell me about what you're doing tomorrow, and just kind of go into your character a little bit too for me.
Yeah. So my shtick here, Alan Jefferson, the aerial American, one-time fan favorite babyface. So Alan Jefferson was born. Well, to tell you that story, let me go ahead and spin another little yarn, I guess. The logic behind a wrestler finding their gimmick, right, is the gimmick is how you portray yourself, right? What you're wrestling, your persona, if you want to call it, your character, that kind of thing. What's your gimmick, right? What sets you apart? What makes you something that people want to come out and give their dollar to see, right? Kind of thing. And they say that the best gimmick is you turned up to 11, right? And so Alan Jefferson is my attempt at finding me turned up to 11 because Alan Jefferson was born from my middle name, Chase Allen, right? And Jefferson because it was presidential, and Washington is already the name of a dynamic wrestling family that I haven't earned my way into. So narrowed it down a little bit. And Alan Jefferson was a kind of Rocky-esque, right, patriotic underdog sort of thing. Very red, white, and blue because I love my patriotism, man. Like,
right.
my Captain Americas and my best friend, my dad, Phil Thompson, 30-year soldier in the National Guard, right, served his country, loved his country. I know it's, world's a wild place right now, but my dad has made me proud to be an American, and I loved seeing the way he loved his country. And growing up, that's how I felt too. And I love my red, white, and blue, and that's what kind of Alan Jefferson was, right? That Rocky underdog. Before Get It Right, It Was Gonna Fly Now was the theme song, right? Because stealing a little bit of that underdog fury, and then I got a little nasty. Now, whenever it's time for a good guy to stop being so good, because sometimes you need to change the gimmick up a little bit, right? I need to change it up if you're performing in front of similar people, right? Every once in a while, this story can get a little old, right? Songwriters, you don't play the same songs every set. You change it up, right? You write new material.
Right.
Things like that, right? Change the set list. Sometimes wrestlers got to do it, and that's called a heel turn. When you a good guy goes bad, not going to be a fan favorite anymore. Getting upset by the sparky rookie Cannonball Matthews set Alan Jefferson into a major league hissy fit, right? Probably the best way to describe it. Shoving a ring announcer and breaking some poor fan's heart, if I remember correctly.
I remember seeing a fan crying as he was leaving the Relics Event Center. It looks very, very similar to someone else I've seen in the mirror in the morning.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think that guy had it coming.
Yeah, probably. Wouldn't be the first time I heard that.
Well, what you gonna do?
What do you know? Heel turn. That phrase. Where does that come from?
So, as far as the origin, the heel, again, being the bad guy, the babyface, or the antithesis to the babyface, right? Would be the turning from, hey, you're swapping it up. It's a babyface, somebody who is firmly good, right? It's the turn, it's the change of direction,
right?
Kind of thing.
So it'd just be the heel. And where does heel come from? Because babyface is pretty self-explanatory, babyface is going to be the one that you want to put on the posters. This is your guy. But in the heel, where does that come from?
Yeah, the heel, it's cowboy slang, I believe, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's like the ruffian, the heel, the reject, right? It's a gruff ne'er-do-well kind of.
Right. What are some other terms that people don't know?
So wrestling, it's kind of art form. I think the big
It
one
has its own
that
language
it
too.
has its own language. Yeah, exactly. It's art form, its own way of communication. So wrestling kind of honors the as sort of a code, right, of kayfabe. This idea that I'm just absolutely shattering and just pooping all over right now. The idea that wrestling is real 24/7, right? This is why Dr. D, David Schultz, slapped the taste out of John Stossel's mouth, right? When John Stossel was asking wrestlers, hey, is wrestling fake, right? And so they responded by knocking him to the floor.
Yep.
This protective kind of brotherhood that everything we do is real. Because again, it's helps sell it, right?
Right.
That's the thing. If when wrestling first started, it was carnies rigging fights to make some money. If people find out it's real, if it gets out, or people find out it's fake, if it gets out, that's the gambit, right? There's no more money, and the curtains kind of pulled back. We're in this sort of new era kayfabe where now there's social media, right? There's no secrets anymore,
Yeah.
and so it's now just like maybe you're lying a lot.
Well, yeah. Where do you think uh, where do you think that line? Where do you think wrestling started to fall out of the kayfabe oriented and into the more here it is. We are presenting a product for you. This is a show about a wrestling show kind of thing. You think it was the curtain call?
You got to think that the curtain call is sort of where it started being acknowledged more, right? But you can look back and it's fun to see. You'll see newspapers from like 1936 accusing wrestling, like the wrestling match of being fixed, of things like that, you know? So it's a thing that it's that blurry line because as it got big, right, the idea was this is a real thing where we're trying to portray. And I think the Attitude Era really kind of kicked off, just sort of, I guess the rise of the NWO, the brand switching maybe between
Yeah.
WWF and,
They kind of blur
WCW,
that line
right? Which
there.
again, the curtain call era, right? Sort
Yeah.
of thing. If it was so much the goodbye hug or the we're getting a little more brazen with we're signing dudes who were like, he was on this TV show, but also he's on this one, at the same night. And like, is that not raising red flags on its own kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's some stuff too, like CM Punk. Let's use him as an example. CM Punk, that fight with Jack Perry was real. That got him fired, and guess what? That's now used in story in both companies, AEW and WWE. The fact that he fought someone backstage, and that is that blurring of that line there, which I find to be super fascinating. We do see that in WWE. You also see in the indies a lot of that mixing. And let's talk about the phrase shoot. I want to go into that.
okay, yeah, absolutely. Sure, and I like the comment on neo kayfabe too, right, or whatever we want to
Neo
call it.
kayfabe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Okay.
sort of what it is now, and in the indies, it kind of evolves. It's sort of that social media thing, right? Because I think in the indies, everybody's sort of what you're really looking for at the end of the day is you want to get noticed or
Right.
you want to get over,
Yeah.
right? So I think it takes a lot of kind of that new blend into what is effectively marketing, right? Kind of the Facebook stuff and YouTube and trying to make highlight reels and pushing stories and doing crazy things that, oh, was it real? Or, did they get hurt? Or is it something I can watch 100 times and send all my buddies,
Right.
kind of thing. But shoot. So wrestling, again, it's a gimmick. It's trying to work some people out of their money. And so the term work is one that gets thrown around a lot in wrestling, and you'll see, wrestling fans may talk about it. A work is your standard wrestling match. Whenever I go out there, if I'm going to have a wrestling match, the person I'm going to fight, we're going to discuss beforehand. We'll have a general framework of kind of what the match is going to be. And then, we'll do the finish. And while we're having the match, we are working together, right? We're trying to do the same thing. So we're all cooperative and we're we're doing the thing. Sometimes you can have a shoot, And shoot, that's going to come from your actual kind of mat wrestling, right? That kind of thing. If you, whenever you're grapple wrestling, like you'll see, in the college championships, things like that, to shoot is to dive in quick, unexpectedly down, for the legs, shoot for the legs, right? To go grab the legs, kind of take control, and you're kind of manipulating your opponent. A shoot in wrestling is when something maybe gets a little personal and people stop following the rules.
Is that what it is? Shoot for the legs? Is that
Yeah,
kind of...
like you're shooting.
Wow.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
shoot in on them, and
I
yeah.
don't think I realized that
Yeah.
until just now. That's
If
interesting.
it's not, it is now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So you say it
Uh,
with confidence, people believe
have
it.
you ever shot anyone, or a receipt?
Sure.
Have you given a receipt before?
I was.
And yeah, you may want to explain what a receipt is.
Yeah.
I think people can figure it out, but
Yeah. Absolutely no. That's a great leading because that was going to be that next little thing. Matches, that turn into a shoot. Somebody goes into business for themselves, right, as they call it, and
Mhm.
starts kind of doing what they want. Obviously not great, not something you want, but ideally you can calm people down, or sometimes somebody's not necessarily shooting on you, but they're getting a little worked up, right? They're getting a little excited because when you're wrestling in a show, especially if there's a lot of people in the crowd, the adrenaline's flowing, somebody's hitting you in the face, people are screaming at you, you want to make it look good, right? Because this is your moment to shine. You can get a little excited. You can start to hit people, right? Get a little snug, a little stiff with it, and when we wrestle, we fight. We know we're in there to get hit. We're hitting each other. There's no doubt, right? It's not all fake, but nobody wants to just get their clock cleaned when they're out there, right? You got to keep
sure.
the brain a little bit safe. So if somebody hits you a little bit, gives you a little tight, you remember, you keep the receipt, and at some point, you return the gift, right?
Yeah, it's so fascinating, but it has a place within wrestling because it with a receipt, that's the way to communicate. That's also communication to what is essentially your dance partner saying, "Hey, don't
Yeah,
do that."
exactly. Like a good stiff receipt is a little code word for slow down a little bit,
Yep.
right? Take it easy because again, yeah, it's when there's a bunch of people standing there screaming at you to take your rival to the ground, you can't really say, "Hey, buddy, take it easy, would you?" You're hitting me a little hard. That makes it a little hard to buy the
Right.
gimmick, right?
Hey, buddy,
Hey, buddy.
just calm it down.
Yeah, this is my
Oh,
boy.
no problems.
So that nonverbal communication, like that's what makes wrestling so cool. And like that's was one of the fascinating challenges of like, can I do this? Right? Like,
Yeah,
am I gonna learn how to wrestle? It looks so crazy. And to be able to communicate just so quickly on the fly and just with the squeeze of a hand, right? Like just
yeah,
little things like that. It is constant communication and constant trust, like I talked about earlier. And that's why you'll see such tight knit locker rooms, right? It's a brotherhood because you have to trust that that person that you're going to talk to without talking to is going to hear you.
yeah. Wow, it's fascinating just thinking about wrestling and how much goes into it. The communication part is super fascinating to me. One thing that I find fascinating is we have different types of wrestling throughout the world. We have wrestling in Japan and Mexico, the US. We have people that wrestle each other that don't speak the same language, but they do in the ring. I find that absolutely fascinating.
It's crazy. No, me too, man. Like, and the blending of styles too. Like, because it's not only different languages that you're working with, but it's different
Right.
ways of wrestling. You'll go to uh, Mexico, of course, lucha libre, right? And in the United Kingdom, you'll see the catch style wrestling, right? The very technical, savvy wrestling. It's neat to see too how wrestling has kind of popped up all over the world,
Right.
right? Kind of organically almost. It's not one that just spread because everybody does it a little different, right?
Yeah.
The one thing we have in common in the world is we all like to fight, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And yeah, I think wrestling is pretty universal. The good guy versus bad guy, just like you said, that story will be around till the end of time. And it's universal, much like music is, or visual arts like painting. I mean, if you see a painting from someone, it does not matter if you know what language they speak. You can get a sense of what's going on in that communication there. It's really a beautiful thing. It's just like you're like a painter, but you're just crazy and putting your body on the line. It is the most insane thing someone could possibly do. Is it worth it?
Man, I'll tell you, it hurts, right? Like it's the to answer the question quick, absolutely worth it 100%. There's zero way it wouldn't be. It's the coolest thing I've ever done, right? I get to be the superhero that I've always wanted to be, so it's always worth it. But man, it's painting would be a lot less painful. It's a shame I can't draw, you know?
Yeah.
You've heard me sing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Good thing you cut a promo though.
Yeah, I can talk. As my trainer said, you're gonna make a great heel. You have a super punchable face.
Great.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Fred.
Injuries. Let's talk about injuries a little bit. No one wants to have injuries in the ring. Unfortunately, it is something that happens. It's a physical activity. It's a physical art. What are some injuries you've had personally?
So every wrestler in the world is gonna get banged up, right? Is gonna get bruised. I have had bruises on every part of my body. I am pretty confident that I think I've collected them all at this point. Some real deep ones. Kendo sticks and chairs leave deeper ones than hands tend to. Though some people will try to challenge that. But
what's a kendo stick for those who?
Oh, yeah. Know. So, if you've ever seen a Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee movie, not Rush Hour 3, I guess. I don't think there's any kendo sticks from Rush Hour 3. There might be. I'm not. I didn't do my Rush Hour 3 research either.
I told you.
I know. I dropped the ball. But so a kendo stick is the fighting reed stick. It's bamboo reeds tethered together, tied together. They make a great loud thwack. They also bite every part of your skin. It's just wooden reeds smacking into you.
Welts, they just happen just so fast.
Oh yeah, pull them up. You get the lines like highway lines. It's pretty gross. But and steel chairs, it's a chair.
It is a chair. Like you can't fake getting hit with a chair. Yeah, like you get hit with the chair, and
you don't get to decide if you fake getting hit with a chair.
Yeah, that's not on you.
Yeah. So
where do you kind of thinking about your future here? Where do you see yourself going with this in the future? Kind of give us a sense of where is Alan Jefferson headed?
Man, where is Alan Jefferson headed? So right now, Alan Jefferson is bopping around several spots in the Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, kind of Kansas area, along with Mid-States, is SICW, a few others, wrestling companies as well. Man, Alan Jefferson is such a cool part of my life, and I don't know 100% where it's going to be. Growing a family, starting things. Have my child on the way. We'll be close to getting here by the time this airs.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. So family life is awesome. There's some wrestlers who go out there, man, and they spend their life on the road, and it was always the dream to try to get that, right?
Sure.
But life, does what it does, and mortgages have to get paid, things like that. But man, I don't know where Alan Jefferson goes. Hopefully he continues to thrill. I'd like to see myself doing this another 10, 15, 40 years.
15, 40?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with wrestling that's really neat is, like any physical sport, whether it's baseball, basketball, you reach a certain age and you can't really do that, but you have other options there. Have you thought about once you get into those older years where you really can't be doing those bumps? Have you thought about any other part of wrestling, like managing or anything to that effect?
Sure, man. I think I'm probably going to be involved with wrestling until I die. Right. It's that's the artist in, I don't, do you ever see a point where you stop playing music?
Precisely. I there's never a point.
Yeah.
where I won't play music.
Like there's no future that I look at and I'm not Alan Jefferson in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Right. If it is, moving down to like doing commentary or managing, because man managers in wrestling are such a fun, just unique aspect again to this art form, right? You can involve a lot of people. It's somebody out there to play with the crowd, right?
Yeah.
To just help move the flow of things. It's all part of the show, right? We're all kind of working toward the same goal and everybody's just trying to work a crowd well.
Yeah, it's truly fascinating. Wrestling, I'm glad we're doing this as our first episode because I am very, very passionate about wrestling. The fact that you do it is amazing. That you're such a close friend of mine, and we're basically brothers, and I get to see you do this all the time. It is so awesome living vicariously through you and seeing you do this art. So I mean, you got to keep doing this. We all love watching you. And I think the one thing that just makes me smile, it just warms my heart, is seeing how you interact with the kids. That is such a huge part of that. And when you're a face, the kids come up to you like you're their superhero. When you're a heel, I've seen them flip you off, and their parents say, "Don't do that." Yeah, it's got to be rewarding.
Man, I will say when I first turned, I felt bad. I felt bad. I don't like being mean sometimes, like I don't like being mean to kids. But then on the other hand, it's kind of really fun to be mean to kids, right? Especially, boy, that requires a little bit of a little bit of context.
Yeah. Yeah, so and it's the art of being mean to kids,
Yeah, right. The art of being mean to kids.
That's what a heel is, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's being a jerk to kids. Ask Cannonball Matthews.
Oh. And Cannonball Matthews is your tag team partner.
My tag team partner, one of my best friends. Man, that guy rocks. He's
awesome.
He's a good kid.
He's awesome. I like tag team wrestling is fascinating because you do have the one-on-one. Kind of explain. How is it different to be in the ring or prepare to be in the ring in a tag team match versus a singles match?
Yeah, so I started out as a singles wrestler and, had my, wrestled singles for a good number of years. And then as I turned heel, worked into a tag team with Cannonball. And I dabbled in, as a babyface doing tag team wrestling too. Having more people to coordinate with and to work with, right? Of course, it's challenging because you've got bodies you have to accommodate for and try to make sure 4 people, 5 people working your referee, are on the same page. But the stories you can tell with 4 people, right? To have those bodies to be able to communicate and work with each other and work against each other and just constantly move in. I love jumping into a tag team rejuvenated my love of wrestling, right? Like not the passion ever died, but there are times where you're wrestling, you're doing the thing. It got new and exciting all over again as I really dove into, because as a fan, I like tag team wrestling a lot. Having a partner to rely on, to work with, to interface with, it's a new best friend,
right.
It's a new buddy.
Yeah.
And there are tag teams that they don't experience that, but I got real lucky, man. I got one of the best.
Yeah, it's a brotherhood, like you said, and it's even closer with your tag team partner there. And I see you and Cannonball Matthews working together, and you are tight. You're totally locked in. What's also cool is I like how you complement each other. You're a bit different, but it complements each other. You're a skinnier guy, and Cannonball Matthews is a cannonball guy. Y'all work really well together, and just seeing you two, I like that. Go on about that, sir.
Yeah, I've heard Cannonball Matthews described as a refrigerator with arms. And that seems pretty appropriate. I've also heard the Kool-Aid Man, but he kind of stopped using the purple singlet after that.
Oh man, yeah, I could see him in a red shirt going, oh yeah, just doing his Macho Man impersonation and just being the Kool-Aid Man instead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's an absolute hoss. Former college football lineman. former amateur wrestler, current ass kicker. Man, he's hungry, man. He loves pro
Yeah.
wrestling. You talk about a guy who is driven and loves to do this sport and eats, sleeps, and breathes wrestling. Cannonball's gonna make it big, man. I'm calling it
He's
now.
awesome, and he's such a nice dude. He's really really nice. Does it for the right reasons, and man, he makes me laugh. He is a funny guy. You two together, you're a really fun tag team to watch, and humor is a part of that. Talk to me more about like how humor fits within wrestling itself.
Absolutely. So, spinning back to the vocabulary that we talked about a little bit, so we'll introduce another one, and it's called corpsing.
Hmm.
And it's the one that Cannonball challenges me at every time we do a show. Because as you mentioned, he's one of the funniest dudes I've ever met. He's great. His intensity, his willingness to shout absurdly mean things at children. Corpsing is the kind of the act of breaking kayfabe, right? Is laughing at your own bit or laughing at somebody's bit when you're supposed to be taking it seriously, right? To not give in. And Cannonball gives me the runaround on that one quite a bit because there's a lot of pulling up the clipboard, checking my petition whenever Cannonball's roasting a child. But
Oh man, that's fantastic.
no, he's a good one. But no, humor is it's a language all on its own, right? Like it's
Right.
another way that we communicate, we connect with people, and humor is a super popular tool in wrestling because people like to laugh,
Right.
right? Heels can do it too. It's about picking your target, right?
Right.
Just sometimes you gotta be a little bit of a bully, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of bully somebody and yeah, make fun of somebody. And we're in a different world, right? We've seen wrestling. If you did grow up a wrestling fan, you're anywhere near our ages, you remember the Attitude Era.
Right.
We had a different kind of idea of how we find humor and how we incorporate that into like the body and things like that. And now it's a little bit of a different world, but there's definitely still ways to use the body to generate humor, right?
Right.
And I think wrestling's it is funny, right?
Yeah.
It's a silly art. It's grown men fighting that on some level, like there's shenanigans going on, and like wrestling that doesn't take itself too seriously is a lot of fun.
Right, right. And it's also awesome that it affords you the opportunity to contrastingly have really dramatic moments. For example, when you turned heel, and just to let everyone know when Alan Jefferson turned heel, um, I had a sign. I made a sign, an Alan Jefferson sign, and he took the sign, ripped it up, threw it at me, yelled at me, and I cried and left. And I didn't come back either. I did not come back either. But that got people. People were seriously worried. That kind of thing, that evoking that emotion is also just as satisfying, right?
Oh yeah, man, that's it. Like whenever it was time, that was probably the most nervous I'd been in my career at that point was pulling off the heel turn, right? And to pull it off with Cannonball, because not realizing that guy was going to go on to become, my tag team partner and one of the very best friends of my life, the guy who I've been training with for a little while, but I didn't know throughout, and I was changing my whole game up, right? Like I'd been a babyface for so long, and with commitment that I'd had to wrestling and not knowing where it would go, the idea of okay, this is the moment where they're either gonna take you as a bad guy or it's over,
Right.
right? Like if it didn't
It's
hit,
super important. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Crucial.
like I wanted it to work, and man,
And
oh,
it worked. You
so
worked your peers.
yeah, everybody bought it.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It was pretty
Good
sweet.
stuff.
It was
Awesome. Well, hey, that really wraps up our hour here. Thank you so much, Mr. Alan Jefferson, Chase Thompson. Any last thing? Where can we find you? Do anything else you want to add before we wrap this all up?
absolutely. So, yes, please, Alan Jefferson on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Alan Jefferson Pro Wrestling on Instagram. But then Alan Jefferson on Facebook, TikTok, social media platforms. Please check me out. Come see Mid States Wrestling. Follow Mid States Wrestling on Facebook, Instagram. check that stuff out, man. Come see pro wrestling one time if you haven't. If you have and you're looking to get out again, it's a pretty fun little date night.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again. This has been a Drunk Math podcast, and we're going to leave you with a song. My name's Cory King, by the way. Chase Thompson, Alan Jefferson. Leave you with a song by Timmy Miano and the Constant Distractions. This one is called Never Been Better. And we have a special guest on this song as well, Mr. Alan Jefferson.
Oh, man, I love this one. This is my favorite Timmy Miano song.
All right, we're going to bring it home. Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
This has gotta be the worst day I've ever had. There have been lots of awful days, but looking back, they don't seem that bad. How many times have we said that? And how many worse have there been? And how much longer until we get to sing that song again? Things have never been better. Things are always the same. Take a look where you come from, and you'll see nothing's changed. It's another movie with the same old plot. The setting is different, the ending is not. Things have never been better. Things have always been bad. I'm slumped into the couch, you're headed for the door. We haven't had a fight like this since we had this fight before. And I scroll through the news for distraction, and it reads like a history text. Like Nostradamus watching Bukkake, it's easy to see what's coming next. These are fucking reboots. And all of our favorite shows are goddamn reruns too. And our favorite kind of mistake is the one that we've already made. And we refuse to learn a lesson. And we always vote incumbent. And we always sing the chorus like ooh la la la, ooh la 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 la, ooh la la la, ooh la 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 la, ooh la la la, ooh la 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 la. Things have never been better. Things are always the same. Take a look where you come from, and you'll see nothing's changed. It's another movie with the same old plot. The setting